Hello, this is Christian Idealism, and today will be the start of my new series on objections to idealism. This is, of course, brought to you by Kyle Allender. So first, in order for idealism to be a plausible view on the nature of reality, we must look into the strongest objections to the idealist ontology. In this series, I hope to present the strongest objections to idealism, then refute those objections to show why once idealism is properly understood, then there are no good reasons to reject it. I will put these objections in the three different categories to weigh the difficulties that these objections have to idealism. I will only briefly explain them in this video, however, I won't go into detail until we actually address these objections in the future videos. And so now we have what I call the weak objection. So the first one is the concreteness objection, which is that since the world feels concrete, then it's unlikely that reality unfolds in consciousness. Then we have the autonomy of nature objection, which is that if nature is in consciousness, we should be able to change the laws of nature, but nature acts independent of our volition, and we cannot change these laws. Then we have the natural order objection, which is that if our perceptions of nature are in consciousness, then this must be stable at root. But our own personal thoughts are unstable, so it's implausible that we are in universal consciousness, since we know that consciousness is disorderly. Then we have the equivalence objection, which is that the notion of there being an objective mental reality outside personal psyches is equivalent to the physicalist notion of an objective reality outside consciousness. Then we have the solipsism objection, which is that idealism implies that it's only one's own mind that exists. Then we have the cosmological history objection, which is that since the universe existed before conscious life arose, then it's implausible that the universe exists in consciousness. So now we have the little better objections, which I call the intermediate objections. First we have the private-minded objection, which is that if all is in consciousness, then we should all have the same mind. However, we all have private minds that are separate from each other. If all of reality is reducible to one universal consciousness, then we shouldn't have private separate minds. Then we have the standalone objection, which is that if all is in consciousness, then the world should not exist when not consciously observed, but it does. Then we have the shared world objection, which is that if all is in consciousness, then reality would be like a dream. But since dreams can only be experienced within one's mind, then we cannot be all in a shared world. However, since we are in a shared world, then it's implausible that we are in a dream. Then we have the brain function objection, which is that we know that head trauma and the use of drugs can highly change and influence one's conscious inner life. So then evidence prefers that there is something outside conscious inner life to be causing this inner life. Then finally we have the implausible cosmic inner life objection, which is that it's implausible that the inanimate universe as it looks is the extrinsic appearance of conscious inner life. So those are the little better objections. Then we have what I think are the strongest objections. First, we have the unconscious causation objection, which is that neuroscience shows that unconscious influences cause our consciousness to make decisions, even up to 10 seconds before we are aware. And then finally, what I think is the strongest objection to idealism is what I call the problem of unconsciousness. And it simply goes like this. We become unconscious very often. But if all is in consciousness, then there should be nothing truly unconscious in the universe. But since we do experience unconsciousness often, with, for example, not remembering your dreams or getting knocked out in the head, then it's more likely that there is something beyond consciousness that can explain these phenomena, or at least that consciousness is not all that exists in reality. And so that will be the strongest objections to idealism. And so moving forward beyond this point, these objections will be explored in more detail as we move along in this series. I hope to show that once closely examined, none of these objections are successful in refuting idealism. These arguments were taken from Bernardo Castro's book, The Idea of the World, in which he himself gives his responses to these objections. I will include some of his response with my own criticisms. And so, that will be it. Thank you for watching, and have a nice day.